A knight is guarding the rook and defending against back rank mate. It has two jobs. But it can only do one at a time. Force it to choose, and one of those defenses collapses. This is overloading, and it's one of the most satisfying tactics in chess. An overloaded piece is a piece that has two or more defensive duties but can only fulfill one at a time. Look at this position. Black has a king on g8, a knight on g6, and pawns on f7 and h7. White has a bishop on f2 and a rook on e1. The black knight on g6 has two jobs. Job 1, it guards the e7 square, so if white plays rook to e7, the knight can capture it. Job 2, it guards the f8 square, keeping an escape route for the king if white invades with the rook. Now if white forces the knight to move from g6, both defensive duties collapse at once. White's rook can invade on e7, attacking the f7 pawn with devastating effect. Or the rook can penetrate to e8. The knight was holding everything together from g6. Once it moves, black's entire position falls apart. That's overloading, one piece, two jobs, and it can only do one at a time. Here's the pattern in action. Black has a king on g8, a pawn on f7, and a knight on d5. White has a bishop on b3 and a rook on f2. The knight on d5 has two critical jobs. Job 1, it blocks the bishop on b3 from attacking the f7 pawn, because the knight sits on the b3 to f7 diagonal. Job 2, the knight controls key central squares and prevents the rook from invading. Now white plays rook to d2, attacking the knight directly. The knight is under attack and must move. But wherever it moves, it leaves the b3 to f7 diagonal open. The bishop on b3 will capture the f7 pawn, threatening the king. The knight had two jobs, block the diagonal and control the center. Forced to abandon d5, it can't do either. That's how you force the choice. Here is one of the most common overloading patterns in chess. Black has a bishop on c8, a rook on d8, a rook on f8, king on g8, and pawns on f7, g7, h7. White has rooks on b1 and e1. The black rook on f8 has two jobs. Job 1, guard the back rank, preventing white from playing rook e8 checkmate. Job 2, support the other pieces on the 8th rank. Now look at white's threats. White's rook on e1 wants to play re8 checkmate, but the rook on f8 guards that square. White's rook on b1 threatens to capture the bishop on c8 along the first rank. If white plays rb1 to b8, that attacks the bishop on c8 and threatens the back rank. Black's rook on f8 is the critical defender. If it moves to help defend c8, re8 is checkmate. If it stays on f8, white captures on c8. The rook on f8 is overloaded. It has two jobs but can only do one at a time. The queen is the most powerful piece, but she can also be the most overloaded. She does so much that opponents constantly give her more tasks than she can handle. Look at this position. Black's queen on e6 has two jobs. Job 1, defend the f7 pawn from the white bishop on c4, which attacks f7 through the diagonal. Job 2, guard the e8 square to prevent white's rook on e1 from delivering back rank threats. Now white plays bishop to d5. The bishop attacks the queen and also aims at f7. If the queen moves to defend f7, she abandons control of e8 and white plays rook e8 checkmate. If she moves to keep e8 covered, bishop takes f7 wins a pawn and threatens the king. The queen is overloaded. She can't do both jobs. Here's your practice puzzle. White has a bishop on b3, a queen on f3, a rook on a1, and pawns on f2, g2, h2 with king on g1. Black has rooks on a8 and f8, a knight on d5, and pawns on f7, g7, h7 with king on g8. Which black piece is overloaded? The knight on d5. It has two jobs. Job 1, the knight on d5 defends the f6 square. If the knight leaves, white's queen could invade via f6. Job 2, the knight blocks the b3 bishop's diagonal toward f7, protecting the king. Now white plays rook f5, attacking the knight directly. If the knight moves away, both defensive duties collapse. If the knight captures the rook, it's left d5 entirely, and white's queen and bishop combine against the weakened kingside. The overloaded knight can't handle the pressure. Let's recap overloaded pieces. An overloaded piece is a defender that has two or more jobs but can only do one at a time. The three most common overload patterns are a piece defending another piece while also guarding a back rank, a queen defending a pawn while also controlling a key square, and a knight or bishop defending two different targets simultaneously. To exploit an overload, attack one of the targets. The defender must commit to saving that target, and the other one becomes vulnerable. Back rank overloads are the most common pattern in real games. Always scan your opponent's position and ask, does that piece have too many responsibilities? If the answer is yes, give it one more problem. It will crack. Next lesson, trapped pieces. Remember, an overloaded piece is defending two or more things but can only handle one at a time. Force it to commit to one defense, and the other falls. Always look for defenders doing double duty in your opponent's position. Ask yourself, does that piece have too many jobs? If yes, give it one more problem to deal with. Next, trapped pieces.